The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Windsor Castle. Guardsman Thomas Bradley stood at his post, his tall bearskin hat perfectly positioned, his red tunic immaculate, his expression stoic. He had been a member of the Queen's Guard for 7 years, and in that time, he had mastered the art of remaining perfectly still, regardless of what happened around him. Tourists gathered behind the ropes, cameras ready, hoping to capture the iconic image of the unmoving guards. Children waved and called out, trying to make the soldiers smile or blink. Adults posed for photos, sometimes making inappropriate gestures or comments. Thomas had seen it all. He had learned to tune out the noise, to focus on his duty, to embody the discipline and tradition that the Queen's Guard represented. But this morning would be different. This morning, something would happen that would challenge every rule Thomas had learned, every protocol he had sworn to uphold. The crowd was typical for a Saturday in late spring. Families on holiday, school groups on educational trips, international tourists checking off a bucket list item. They pressed against the barriers, jostling for better views, their excited chatter creating a constant hum of background noise. Among them was a family that looked different from the others. A mother and father walked slowly, carefully, supporting a small girl between them. The child was perhaps 6 years old, wearing a bright pink jacket despite the warm weather. A colorful scarf covered her head, and even from a distance, it was clear she was unwell. The little girl's name was Emma Collins. 3 months ago, she had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, an aggressive form of childhood cancer. The diagnosis had shattered her family's world. One day, Emma was a normal kindergartner who loved dancing and painting. The next day, she was undergoing chemotherapy, losing her hair, spending weeks at a time in hospital rooms. The treatment was harsh. Emma endured needle sticks, nausea, exhaustion, and pain that no child should have to experience. She missed her friends, missed school, missed being able to play without getting tired after 5 minutes. But through it all, Emma maintained a spark of joy that amazed everyone who met her. Her parents. David and Sarah Collins tried desperately to create moments of happiness amid the medical nightmare. When Emma mentioned that her biggest wish was to see the royal guards at Windsor Castle, they immediately began planning. The doctors had given permission for the trip, carefully scheduling it between chemotherapy cycles when Emma would have the most energy. David carried a small bag with Emma's medications, a water bottle, and emergency contact numbers for her oncologist. Sarah held Emma's hand gently, aware that the chemotherapy had made her daughter's skin sensitive and her bones fragile. They moved at Emma's pace, which was slow and deliberate. Emma's eyes were fixed on the guards. She had seen pictures in books, watched videos online, but being here in person was magical. The guards looked like toy soldiers come to life, so tall and perfectly dressed, standing so incredibly still. "Mummy, they don't move at all," Emma whispered, her voice weak but filled with wonder. "Are they real people?" "They're very real, sweetheart. They're soldiers who protect the castle. They're trained to stand very still. Can I get closer? I want to see better." Sarah looked at David, concerned. The crowd was thick, and Emma tired so easily. But this was why they had come. This might be one of Emma's last good days, though neither parent wanted to acknowledge that thought. They worked their way through the crowd as politely as possible. Some people saw Emma's condition and immediately made space. Others were too absorbed in their own photos and experiences to notice. Eventually, they reached the front barrier. Directly in front of where Thomas Bradley stood guard, Emma stared up at him with absolute fascination. Thomas, maintaining his stoic expression, was nonetheless aware of the little girl. In his peripheral vision, he could see her thin frame, scarf covering her head, the way she leaned against her mother for support. "He's so tall," Emma said. "And his hat is so big and fuzzy. Do you think it's heavy?" "Probably, darling," Sarah replied, fighting back tears. Her daughter looked so small and fragile next to the imposing guard. Emma studied Thomas. With the intense focus that children bring to things that captivate them, she noticed how his boots shined like mirrors, how the buttons on his tunic were perfectly aligned, how his rifle was positioned at exactly the right angle. "I wish I could talk to him," Emma said. "I want to ask him questions." "The guards aren't allowed to talk, sweetheart. It's part of their job. Not even to children? Not even to children. They have to focus on protecting the castle. Emma accepted this explanation with the same quiet resignation she had learned to apply to many disappointments in her life. She couldn't go to school because her immune system was too weak. She couldn't play with other children because they might carry germs. She couldn't eat her favorite foods because chemotherapy had stolen her appetite. Now she couldn't talk to the guard because he had rules to follow, but she could look at him, and that would have to be enough. Emma committed every detail to memory, wanting to remember this moment. When she was back in her hospital room, with needles in her arms and medicine making her sick, Thomas remained motionless. But inside his heart was breaking. He had seen countless children during his time on guard duty. Most were healthy and energetic, seeing him as a curiosity or a photo opportunity. But Emma was different. He could see the illness in her thin limbs and the pallor of her skin, the careful way her parents supported her. He had been trained to ignore distractions, to maintain his post regardless of circumstances. Guards had stood still while tourists mocked them, while birds landed on their hats, while protesters shouted in their faces. The ability to remain unmoved was considered the hallmark of professionalism. But Emma wasn't mocking him or trying to get a reaction for social media. She was simply a sick child who found joy in something Thomas represented. And somehow, that made all the difference. Minutes passed. Emma continued to stare, occasionally whispering observations to her parents. She noticed when Thomas blinked, which happened so rarely she counted the seconds between each one. She saw how his chest moved with measured breaths. She studied the reflection in his boots. Other tourists came and went, taking quick photos and moving on. But Emma remained transfixed. This was better than any television show, more interesting than any game. Here was a real soldier, standing guard at a real castle. And she was close enough to see everything. Sarah noticed Emma swaying slightly. "Sweetheart, are you getting tired? Maybe we should sit down for a bit." "Not yet, Mummy. Just a few more minutes." "Please." David and Sarah exchanged glances. Emma had so few things that brought her joy anymore. If standing here watching a guard made her happy, they would stand here as long as she wanted, but Sarah saw something else in her daughter's expression. It wasn't just fascination. It was longing. Emma wanted to connect with the guard somehow, to have some interaction beyond just observing from behind a barrier. "Emma, what are you thinking about?" Sarah asked gently. "I want to give him something." "A present? Do you think he would like a present?" "Oh, honey, I don't think the guards are allowed to accept gifts. Not even a small one? Not even something to make him smile?" Sarah's heart shattered. Her daughter, who was fighting for her life, with every reason to focus on her own needs, wanted to give something to a stranger to make him happy. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a little plastic toy soldier, maybe 2 inches tall, painted in the same red and black colors as the real guards. She had bought it at a hospital gift shop with money her grandmother had given her, thinking it might help her feel brave during treatments. "Can I give him this?" Emma asked. "So he knows someone thinks he's special?" David knelt beside his daughter. "Sweetheart, that's your special soldier. You don't have to give it away, but I want to. He stands here all day in the sun and heat, and nobody thanks him. I want him to know that I think he's doing a good job." Tomas heard every word. His eyes remained forward, his expression unchanged. But internally, he was fighting emotions he had never experienced while on duty. This child, this desperately sick child, wanted to give him her toy to make him feel appreciated. The protocols were clear. Guards did not interact with tourists. They did not accept gifts. They did not break their stance except for specific authorized movements at specific times. To do otherwise would be a serious breach of duty that could result in disciplinary action. But protocols were written for normal circumstances. They didn't account for moments like this. Emma stepped closer to the barrier, holding out the tiny soldier. "Excuse me, Mr. Guard. I have something for you." But Amos didn't respond, couldn't respond. He remained locked in position, though his heart was racing. "Emma, he can't take it," Sarah said softly. "He has to follow rules." "But why?" "It's just a little toy. It won't hurt anything." A small crowd had gathered, noticing the interaction. Some people held up their phones, sensing that something unusual was happening. Others smiled at the sweet gesture from the sick child. Emma's arm began to shake from holding out the toy. She was so weak, even this small effort was exhausting her. But she didn't lower her arm. She stood there, offering her gift, hoping somehow the guard would understand what it meant. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She wanted to pull Emma away, to spare her this disappointment. But she also knew her daughter needed to try, needed to make this connection, needed to believe that her gesture mattered. Thomas stood frozen, trapped between duty and humanity. Every aspect of his training told him to remain still, to ignore the situation, to let it pass without reaction. But every aspect of his heart told him something different. The second stretched out. Emma's arm trembled. The crowd watched in silence. And Thomas Bradley, guardsman of the Queen's Guard, faced the most important decision of his military career. He thought about why he had joined the Guard in the first place. Yes, it was about discipline and tradition and service. But ultimately, it was about protecting people, about standing for something good and noble. And what could be more noble than acknowledging a dying child's attempt to spread kindness? Thomas made his decision. Slowly, carefully, he moved his eyes downward to meet Emma's gaze. It was a tiny movement, barely perceptible to anyone not paying close attention. But to Emma, it was everything. Her face lit up with a smile so bright, it seemed impossible that someone so ill could radiate such joy. "You can see me," she exclaimed. "You're real." Thomas's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile, another breach of protocol, but one he couldn't prevent. Emma's happiness was contagious, even for someone trained to show no emotion. "Thank you for standing guard," Emma said, her voice growing weaker. "You're very brave. I want to be brave like you." Something broke inside Thomas. This child thought he was brave for standing still in a ceremonial uniform. While she faced cancer with grace and still found the strength to think about making others happy, she didn't understand that she was far braver than he could ever hope to be. The rules said don't move. The rules said don't interact. The rules said maintain the tradition and dignity of the position at all costs. But in that moment, Thomas realized that sometimes the most dignified thing you can do is acknowledge another person's humanity, especially when that person might not have much time left to be acknowledged. The decision took less than 3 seconds. Thomas Bradley had spent 7 years perfecting the art of being invisible, of fading into the role of statue-like guardian. Now, he was about to throw all of that away for a little girl holding a plastic toy soldier. He made another small movement, this time shifting his gaze to his sergeant who stood at a distance, monitoring the guards. The sergeant was watching the interaction, his expression neutral but alert. Thomas needed to know if this would be permitted. If breaking protocol in this moment would be understood or condemned. The sergeant, a man named Robert Hughes, who had served for 20 years, saw something in Thomas's eyes. A question, a plea, a human moment breaking through military discipline. Hughes had children of his own, grandchildren too. He saw the little girl's condition, saw her trembling arms still holding out the toy, saw her parents barely holding back tears. Hughes gave the smallest nod. It was barely a movement, just a slight tilt of his head that could have been mistaken for adjusting his position. But it was permission. Unofficial, unspoken, but real. Thomas took a breath. Then, in a movement that felt both terrifyingly rebellious and absolutely right, he broke his stance. He shifted his rifle slightly, then bent down on one knee, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. The crowd gasped. Phones went up, capturing the moment. This wasn't supposed to happen. Guards didn't kneel. Guards didn't break formation. Guards certainly didn't interact with tourists. But Thomas wasn't thinking about the crowd, or the rules, or the potential consequences. He was focused entirely on Emma, whose eyes had gone wide with surprise and delight. "Hello there," Thomas said quietly, his voice gentle, despite years of shouting commands on training grounds. "What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered, barely able to believe this was happening. "Emma Collins. I'm 6 3/4. "That's a very grown-up age," Thomas replied. "I'm Guardsman Bradley, but you can call me Thomas." Emma's smile grew impossibly wider. "You talked to me. I didn't think you were allowed to talk." Normally I'm not. But I think this is a special circumstance, don't you? Because I'm sick? Thomas felt his throat tighten. Children were so honest, so direct. Because you're very kind, and kindness deserves to be recognized. Emma held out the toy soldier again, her hand shaking less now that Thomas was kneeling. This is for you. I bought him at the hospital shop. He's been keeping me company during my treatments, but I want you to have him now, so you won't be lonely standing here all day. Thomas took the tiny soldier with reverence, as if Emma was handing him a medal of honor. This is one of the best gifts I've ever received. I'll keep him in my pocket right over my heart. That way he'll help me be brave, just like he helped you. You need help being brave? Emma asked, surprised. But you're a soldier. Everyone needs help being brave sometimes. Even soldiers. Especially soldiers. Emma thought about this. I have to be brave a lot. When they put needles in me, and when the medicine makes me sick, and when I can't play because I'm too tired. My mummy says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do things even when you are scared. Your mummy is very wise, and you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Really? Emma's eyes shone with tears, but they were happy tears. Really and truly. Do you know what we call people who stand strong even when things are hard? We call them heroes. And that's what you are, Emma. A hero. Sarah Collins had collapsed against her husband, sobbing quietly. David held her, his own tears falling freely. Other people in the crowd were crying too. Moved by the tender scene unfolding before them, Emma looked at her scarf, then back at Thomas. I lost all my hair from the medicine. That's why I wear this. Some kids at the hospital don't have hair either. We look different from other children. You know what I think? Thomas said. I think that scarf makes you look like a superhero with a special cape. And the fact that you're going through treatment and still thinking about giving gifts to others, that's a superpower. What kind of superpower? The superpower of making people feel seen and valued. That's rarer and more important than any other power. Emma considered this. Can I ask you something? Anything? Does your hat get heavy? And hot? Thomas laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even himself. Yes, it gets very heavy. And very hot, especially in summer. But we train to wear it so we can look our best while protecting important places. I think you look wonderful. Like a storybook come to life. I think you look wonderful too. That pink jacket is very cheerful. It brightens up the whole courtyard, Emma beamed. Then she said something that made Thomas's heart break all over again. I might not get to see you again. My doctors say I have to have more treatment, and sometimes I'm too sick to leave the hospital. But I'll remember you forever. Will you remember me? Thomas took Emma's small hand gently. Emma Collins, I promise you that I will remember you for the rest of my life. Every single day when I put on this uniform, I'll think about the brave girl who gave me her special soldier. You've made me better at my job, and better as a person. How did I do that? You reminded me why this work matters. It's not about standing still or following rules perfectly. It's about protecting people and honoring those who deserve to be honored. Like you, Emma suddenly looked very tired. The excitement and emotion were draining her limited energy. Sarah stepped forward gently. Sweetheart, we should probably let the guardsman return to his post. You've had a big morning? Just one more minute? Emma pleaded. Thomas looked at Emma's parents, seeing the exhaustion and fear in their eyes. Would it be all right if I gave Emma something too? A trade, so to speak. David nodded, too emotional to speak. Thomas reached to his uniform and carefully removed one of the smaller brass buttons from his tunic. It wasn't an official regimental button, just one of the decorative ones that wouldn't affect the uniform's function. He placed it in Emma's hand. This button has been with me through every duty, every ceremony, every moment of service. Now I want you to have it. When you're in the hospital and things are hard, you can hold this and remember that you're brave, you're strong, and you're not alone. Somewhere, a guardsman is standing tall and thinking about you, wishing you strength. Emma clutched the button like it was the most precious jewel. I'll keep it forever. I'll never lose it. I know you won't. You're a keeper of important things. Sergeant Hughes approached then, his footsteps measured and deliberate. Thomas tensed, wondering if the moment of grace had ended and consequences were about to begin. But Hughes simply nodded at Emma and said, "Miss Collins, thank you for visiting Windsor Castle today. You've brought honor to this place." "Thank you, sir," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper now. Hughes looked at Thomas. "Guardsman Bradley, please escort Miss Collins and her family to the visitor center. They may need a place to rest before their journey home." It was a kind gesture, disguised as an order, giving Thomas permission to spend a few more minutes with Emma, while also ensuring the family had somewhere quiet to recover from the emotional moment. Thomas stood, adjusting his uniform, then offered his arm to Emma. "May I escort you, Miss Collins?" Emma giggled, delighted by the formal gesture. She took his arm with her free hand, still clutching his button with the other. Together, they walked slowly toward the visitor's center, with David and Sarah following close behind. The crowd parted automatically, people dabbing at their eyes, many recording the scene on their phones. Someone started clapping, and soon the entire courtyard erupted in applause. Emma looked around in wonder, not understanding that the applause was for her as much as for Thomas. Inside the visitor center, Thomas helped Emma sit in a comfortable chair. A staff member brought water and biscuits. Emma's energy was almost completely depleted now, but her smile remained. "Thank you for walking with me," she said. "I felt like a real princess. You are real royalty, braver than any princess in any story." David stepped forward, extending his hand to Thomas. "Guardsman Bradley, I don't have words adequate to thank you. What you did out there, breaking protocol to honor our daughter, it means more than you can possibly know." Thomas shook his hand firmly. "Sir, your daughter honored me. She saw someone standing at their post and thought about how to make their day better. That's extraordinary character." Sarah hugged Thomas, something that would normally be completely inappropriate with a guard in uniform, but somehow felt right in this moment. "You've given Emma a memory she treasure. Whether she has days or years ahead of her, she'll remember the guardsman who saw her, who talked to her, who treated her like she mattered. She does matter, tremendously." Thomas knelt one more time in front of Emma. "I need to return to my post now, but I meant what I said. I'll think about you every day. You've changed something in me, Emma. You've reminded me what true courage looks like." "Will you stand brave for me?" Emma asked. "I'll stand brave because of you. There's a difference." Emma leaned forward and hugged Thomas, her thin arms barely reaching around his broad shoulders. He held her carefully, aware of how fragile she was, but wanting her to feel the strength and support of the embrace. "Goodbye, Thomas," Emma whispered. "Goodbye, Emma. Stay strong, little hero." When Thomas stood and walked back toward his post, he felt transformed. The uniform felt different, heavier with meaning. The role felt different, more purposeful. He had been a guard for 7 years. But only now did he truly understand what he was guarding. Not just buildings and traditions, but the capacity for human kindness and connection. As he resumed his position at his post, Sergeant Hughes approached. "That was well done, Bradley. I'll handle any questions from command. What you did out there was the right thing." "Thank you, Sergeant. I thought I might have crossed a line." "You did cross a line, but some lines need to be crossed. That little girl needed what you gave her more than the military needs: perfect adherence to protocol." Hughes paused. "I have a granddaughter her age. If she were sick and someone showed her that kind of kindness, I'd be grateful beyond measure." Throughout the rest of his shift, Thomas stood at his post with renewed purpose. Emma's toy soldier rested in his pocket, a tiny weight against his heart. Every few minutes he would think about her smile, her courage, her generous spirit. Tourists continued to take photos. Children continued to try to make him react, but Thomas barely noticed. His mind was occupied with thoughts of a 6-year-old girl fighting for her life, while still finding the strength to give gifts to strangers. When his shift ended and he returned to the barracks, Thomas checked his phone for the first time in hours. Social media was exploding. Multiple videos of his interaction with Emma had gone viral. News outlets were picking up the story. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, praising his compassion and the break from protocol. But there were also critics. Some argued that guards should never break formation regardless of circumstances. Others claimed he had set a bad precedent that would make it harder for other guards to maintain discipline. A few accused him of seeking attention or using a sick child for publicity. Thomas ignored the critics. He didn't break protocol for publicity or praise. He did it because a dying child offered him a gift, and refusing that gift would have been a greater breach of honor than any violation of standing orders. His commander called him in for a meeting the next day. Thomas went prepared to accept whatever consequences came. He had made his choice consciously and would stand by it. Commander Patterson was a stern man in his late 50s who had served in multiple combat zones. He gestured for Thomas to sit, then pulled up one of the videos on his computer. They watched in silence as Digital Thomas knelt before Digital Emma, their conversation captured for millions to see. When the video ended, Patterson leaned back in his chair. "Do you know how many regulations you violated in that interaction, Bradley?" "Several, sir." "I'm prepared to accept appropriate discipline. What you did could be viewed as abandoning your post, breaking formation without authorization, engaging with civilians while on duty, and accepting gifts from tourists. Any one of those could result in serious consequences." "Yes, sir, I understand." Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What you did could also be viewed as exemplifying the highest ideals of military service, showing compassion, recognizing when humanity trumps protocol, and using your position to make a positive difference in someone's life." Thomas wasn't sure how to respond, so he remained silent. "That little girl is going viral, Bradley. Her story is spreading everywhere. People are talking about courage, kindness, and what it means to serve. They're not talking about perfect protocol adherence. They're talking about a guardsman who saw a child's humanity and responded with his own." Commander Patterson pulled up more videos on his computer. The interaction between Thomas and Emma had been captured from dozens of angles, posted across every social media platform imaginable. The view counts were in the millions and climbing rapidly. "This one has 15 million views," Patterson said, clicking on one video. "This one has 20 million. The hashtag breaking protocol with love is trending worldwide. News networks from 6 different countries have requested interviews with you." Thomas felt overwhelmed. "Sir, I wasn't trying to create a media event. I just wanted to acknowledge a sick child who was being kind to me. I know that. Everyone knows that. That's exactly why this is resonating with people." Patterson leaned forward. "The world is tired of rigid adherence to rules that don't make sense. They're hungry for examples of people choosing compassion over protocol. You've given them that example. What does command say about all this? Command is pragmatic. They recognize that your actions, while technically in violation of standing orders, have generated enormous positive publicity for the Guard. Donations to children's cancer charities have spiked. Applications to join the military have increased. People are talking about the honor and humanity of service rather than just viewing guards as tourist attractions." Thomas felt relief wash over him. "So I'm not being disciplined?" "Oh, you're absolutely being disciplined," Patterson said, but there was a hint of a smile. "You're being assigned to community outreach duty, effective immediately. In addition to your regular rotation, you'll be visiting children's hospitals, speaking at schools, and representing the Guard at charity events. Consider it punishment for making the rest of us look bad by being too kind." Thomas laughed despite himself. "That sounds like a reward, not a punishment, sir. It's whatever you make of it. But Bradley, there's something you need to understand. What you did wasn't just about one moment with one child. It's about what you represent now. People are going to look at you as an example of how to balance duty with humanity. That's a responsibility." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because this won't be easy. You'll meet dozens, maybe hundreds of sick children. Some will recover, many won't. You'll form connections with families who are experiencing the worst moments of their lives. That takes an emotional toll." Thomas thought about Emma's face, her courage, her generosity. "It's worth it, sir. If I can make even a small difference, if I can help kids feel brave for just a moment, then it's worth any emotional cost." Patterson nodded approvingly. "That's what I wanted to hear. Your first assignment is tomorrow afternoon. Great Ormond Street Hospital. They've requested you specifically. Apparently, several young patients saw the video and wanted to meet the guardsman who was kind to Emma. The next day, Thomas arrived at Great Ormond Street Hospital in his dress uniform. He had visited hospitals before on official duties, but this felt different. This was personal. A hospital administrator named Claire met him at the entrance. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Guardsman Bradley, thank you for coming. The children are so excited. For many of them, this is the highlight of their week, possibly their month. I'm honored to be here. Please, just tell me what you need from me. Be yourself. Be the person you were with, Emma. These children need to feel seen, to feel like they matter beyond their diagnosis. You have a gift for that?" Claire led him through the pediatric oncology ward. The walls were painted with cheerful murals, but they couldn't quite mask the institutional reality of the place. Machines beeped. Medical staff moved purposefully. Children in various stages of illness lay in beds or sat in wheelchairs. The first child Thomas met was a boy named Marcus, age 8, who had brain cancer. Marcus was bald from chemotherapy and had a long scar across his head from surgery. But his eyes lit up when Thomas entered his room. "You're real," Marcus exclaimed. "I thought maybe the video was fake, like movie effects." "I'm very real," Thomas said, sitting beside Marcus's bed. "And I hear you're a pretty tough guy yourself. Had brain surgery. They took out a tumor the size of a golf ball. Want to see my scar?" Marcus showed off his surgical scar with pride, and Thomas examined it with appropriate reverence. "That's one impressive battle wound. You're a warrior." "That's what my dad says. He says I'm fighting a war inside my body, and the doctors are my weapons." "Your dad is right. And how's the battle going?" Marcus's expression fell slightly. "Some days are good. Some days are really hard. Today's a good day because you're here." They talked for 20 minutes. Thomas learned that Marcus loved football, wanted to be an engineer when he grew up, and had a younger sister who was scared to visit him in the hospital because seeing him sick made her cry. "What do you think I should tell her?" Marcus asked. "I want her to visit, but I don't want her to be sad." Thomas considered carefully. "Maybe tell her that seeing someone you love going through something hard is scary, but being there for them is what makes you brave. You need her, and she needs to know that you still love her, even though you're sick." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's good. I'll tell her that." As Thomas prepared to leave, Marcus said, "Can I ask you something? In the video, you gave Emma a button from your uniform. I don't want to be greedy, but do you have anything you could give me? Something to remind me to be brave?" Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out Emma's toy soldier. He had carried it every day since their meeting, drawing strength from it. "This was a gift from a very brave girl. She gave it to me to help me be courageous. I think she would want you to have it now, to pass that courage along." Marcus took the tiny soldier with reverence. "I'll take good care of him. And when I get better, I'll give him to another kid who needs courage." That's exactly right. Courage is meant to be shared. Over the next 4 hours, Thomas visited 12 more children. Each had their own story, their own battle, their own unique personality that transcended their illness. There was Sophie, age 5, who had leukemia and wanted to show Thomas every single one of her stuffed animals. There was Dylan, age 11, with bone cancer, who challenged Thomas to a video game match and won. There was Amara, age 7, with neuroblastoma, who sang Thomas a song she had written about being strong. Each child took a piece of Thomas's heart. Each conversation reinforced his decision to break protocol with Emma. These children needed more than medical treatment. They needed to feel valued, seen, and special. They needed to know that their lives mattered beyond hospital rooms and treatment plans. At the end of the visit, Claire walked Thomas back to the entrance. "You have a rare gift. Most people don't know how to talk to seriously ill children. They either treat them like they're dying, or they pretend nothing is wrong. You treat them like people, like individuals with personalities and interests beyond their diagnosis. That's all they want, to be seen as themselves, not as their illness. Will you come back? The children would love to see you again. I'll come back as often as my schedule allows. This is important work." As Thomas drove back to barracks, he felt emotionally exhausted but fulfilled. This was what service truly meant. not standing at attention for tourists, not participating in ceremonies, but making a tangible difference in the lives of people who needed hope. His phone buzzed constantly with messages. Friends and family had seen the viral videos. Journalists wanted interviews. Organizations wanted him to speak at events. It was overwhelming, but one message stood out. It was from David Collins, Emma's father. "Guardsman Bradley, Emma asked me to contact you. She wanted you to know that she's having a tough week with treatment. But she holds your button every time they put needles in her. She says it makes her feel like you're there with her, helping her be brave. Thank you for that gift. It means everything to her, and to us." Thomas typed back immediately. "Please tell Emma that I'm thinking about her every day. She's the bravest person I know. I'm honored that my button can help her through hard moments." David's response came quickly. "She wants to know if you'll come visit her at the hospital, only if it's not too much trouble. She understands if you're too busy." "I would be honored to visit Emma. When would be a good time?" They arranged for Thomas to visit 2 days later, during a break in Emma's chemotherapy cycle, when she would have more energy. Thomas cleared it with his commanders, who not only approved but encouraged it. Recognizing the positive impact such visits could have, when Thomas arrived at Emma's hospital, he brought several items. He had spent his own money on a stuffed guard teddy bear wearing a miniature uniform. He had also arranged something special with his regiment. Emma was in her room, looking smaller and more fragile than she had at Windsor Castle. The chemotherapy was taking its toll. But when she saw Thomas walk through the door, her face transformed with joy. "Thomas, you came!" "I didn't think you'd really come. Of course I came. I promised I'd remember you, didn't I? And I wanted to see my friend. We're friends? The best of friends. Friends who help each other be brave." Thomas sat beside Emma's bed and presented her with the stuffed guard. "I brought you this. His name is Captain Courage. He's here to stand guard over your room and keep you safe." Emma hugged the bear tightly. "He's perfect. I love him. I'm glad. And I brought something else." Thomas pulled out an official document with the royal seal. This is a certificate from the Queen's Guard. It states that Emma Collins has been named an honorary Guard member for her exceptional courage and kindness. It's signed by my commanding officer and stamped with the official seal. Sarah gasped. "Is this real?" "Absolutely real. Emma is now officially part of the Queen's Guard family. When she gets out of the hospital, we'll even arrange a proper ceremony at the castle if she's well enough." Emma stared at the certificate with wide eyes. "I'm a real guard. Like you, just like me. You stand guard against illness. You protect your family from worry by being brave. You serve with honor. Those are the qualities of a true guard. Can I tell the other kids in the cancer ward? They won't believe it. You can absolutely tell them. And if any of them want to visit the castle or meet other guards, we'll arrange it. You're part of our family now, and family looks out for each other." Emma's energy was fading, but she fought to stay awake, not wanting the visit to end. Thomas noticed and said, "I should let you rest, but I'll come back soon. And in the meantime, Captain Courage will keep watch." "Thomas, wait," Emma said. "I want to tell you something important." "What is it?" "My doctors say my cancer is very serious. They're trying really hard to make me better, but they don't know if it will work. Mummy and Daddy try to hide it, but I hear them crying at night." Thomas felt his chest tighten. He glanced at David and Sarah, who both had tears streaming down their faces. Emma continued, "I'm not sad about it most of the time. I've had a good life. I have a mummy and daddy who love me. I got to go to Windsor Castle. I met a real guardsman who became my friend. That's more than some people get. Emma, you're 6 years old. You should have decades ahead of you, not just memories. Maybe. But if I don't, I want you to know something. Meeting you changed things for me. Before, I was just sick, Emma, the girl with cancer. But you made me feel special. You made me feel like I was more than my illness. You gave me a reason to be brave, not because I have to be, but because I want to be." Like you, Thomas couldn't stop his tears. This child, this impossibly brave child, was comforting him about her own potential death. "Whatever happens," Emma said, I want you to keep being kind to other kids like me. Keep breaking the rules when it's the right thing to do. Keep being the guardsman who sees people, not just protocols. Promise, Emma. I absolutely promise. Emma smiled, satisfied. Then she said something that would stay with Thomas forever. You know what's funny? Everyone thinks you did something special for me at the castle. But really, I did something special for you. What do you mean? I gave you permission to be yourself. To be the person you wanted to be, instead of just the person the rules said you had to be. That's my gift to you. The button you gave me helps me be brave. But the permission I gave you helps you be human. We traded the best gifts. Thomas sat in stunned silence. Emma, at 6 years old, understood something that many adults never grasped. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is permission to break free from constraints that no longer serve them. You're right, Thomas said finally. That is the best gift. Thank you, Emma. You're welcome. Now I'm going to sleep because I'm very tired. But will you stay until I fall asleep? Just so I know you're here? I'll stay as long as you need me to. Thomas sat beside Emma's bed, holding her small hand gently. Sarah and David stood at the foot of the bed, holding each other. Within minutes, Emma drifted off to sleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. Captain Courage tucked under her arm. When Thomas finally stood to leave, David walked him to the elevator. She's not going to make it, is she? David asked quietly. Thomas couldn't lie. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I know she's fighting as hard as she can. The thing is, she's made peace with it. My 6-year-old daughter has accepted something I can't even think about without falling apart. And somehow, that makes it both better and worse. She's extraordinary. And you've been part of what makes this bearable for her. You've given her something to focus on beyond treatment and pain. You've given her pride in her courage. That's a priceless gift. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital visits, media interviews, and regular guard duties. Thomas's life had transformed completely. He was no longer just another guardsman standing at his post. He had become a symbol of compassion in uniform, proof that military discipline and human kindness could coexist. News outlets ran follow-up stories about Emma. Her condition fluctuated dramatically. Some days she had energy and could play. Other days, she could barely lift her head from the pillow. The chemotherapy was destroying the cancer, but also destroying her small body. Thomas visited as often as he could. Sometimes Emma was awake and they talked. Other times, she slept while he sat quietly beside her bed, keeping his promise to stand guard. Sarah and David came to view him as an extended family member, someone who understood their daughter in a unique way. During one visit, Emma had an idea. Thomas, there are other kids here who are scared and lonely. Could you visit them too? Not just me? Of course. I've been visiting other hospitals, but I should have asked to visit your friends here. Emma's face lit up. Really? That would be so wonderful. There's a girl named Lily who hardly ever gets visitors because her family lives far away. And a boy named Jackson who's afraid of everything. You could help them like you helped me. That afternoon, Thomas visited 6 other children in Emma's ward. Each visit was different. Each child unique in their fears and hopes. Lily cried when Thomas told her she was brave. Jackson asked 100 questions about being a guard. A tiny 3-year-old named Oliver just wanted Thomas to sit with him while he had his treatment. Word spread throughout the hospital. Other wards requested visits. Thomas coordinated with his commanders to establish a regular schedule. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons became his hospital time, sacred and unchanging. The Guard Regiment recognized the value of what Thomas was doing. They assigned 2 other guardsmen to join him, expanding the program. Soon, Queen's Guard members were visiting children's hospitals across London, bringing joy and courage to young patients fighting terrible battles. Emma's condition worsened as autumn approached. The chemotherapy wasn't working as well as doctors had hoped. They tried different treatments, more aggressive approaches, but the cancer was relentless. Emma grew weaker, thinner, more fragile. One October evening, Thomas received a call from David. His voice was shaking. Thomas, the doctors say Emma doesn't have much time left. Days, maybe a week. She's asked for you. Could you come? Thomas was at the hospital within 30 minutes. Emma's room was dim, filled with the beeping of monitors and the hiss of oxygen equipment. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her skin pale, her breathing labored, but when she saw Thomas, she smiled. It was a weak smile, but genuine. You came. I'll always come when you need me, Emma. I wanted to say goodbye properly. Not just falling asleep without saying it. Thomas pulled a chair close to her bed. Sarah and David sat on the other side, holding their daughter's hands. You don't have to say goodbye yet. Keep fighting. I'm tired of fighting. It hurts too much. And the doctors say the cancer is winning anyway. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. But I'm not scared. Do you know why? Why? Because I know what happens when you've been brave. People remember. People are changed. I changed you, Thomas. I saw it happen. And now you're changing other kids, helping them be brave. So even when I'm gone, part of me keeps going through you. Thomas couldn't speak through his tears. Emma, dying at 6 years old, was comforting him, teaching him about legacy and meaning. I have something for you, Emma said. She gestured weakly to the bedside table. Sarah picked up a small envelope and handed it to Thomas. Inside was a child's drawing. Emma had drawn 2 figures holding hands. One was tall with a red uniform and big black hat. One was small with a pink jacket and a scarf. Above them, Emma had written in shaky letters, "Friends forever. Love, Emma." I drew this on a good day last week, Emma explained. I wanted you to have a picture of us together, so you can remember exactly how we looked. Emma, this is beautiful. I'll treasure it forever. Hang it somewhere important. Somewhere you'll see it every day. And when you see it, remember to be kind. Remember to break rules when kindness matters more. Remember that being human is more important than being perfect. I promise. I'll remember every single day. Emma's breathing became more labored. A nurse came in, checked monitors, and whispered something to Sarah. It was clear that Emma didn't have much time left. Thomas, Emma said, her voice growing fainter, tell me the guard oath. The promise you made when you became a soldier? Thomas recited the oath of service, words about duty, honor, and protection. Emma listened with her eyes closed, a small smile on her lips. When he finished, Emma said, That's beautiful. I want to make my own oath. Will you help me? Of course. Emma thought for a moment, then spoke slowly, pausing between phrases to catch her breath. I, Emma Collins, promise to be brave even when it's hard. I promise to be kind even when I'm hurting. I promise to remember that love is stronger than fear. I promise to make other people feel special and seen, and I promise that my courage will live on in everyone I've touched. That's a perfect oath, Thomas said through his tears. The best oath I've ever heard. Will you say it with me? One more time? Together, Thomas and Emma recited her oath. Sarah and David joined in, their voices breaking with emotion. The nurse in the corner was crying. Even the doctor who stepped in to check on Emma had tears in his eyes. When they finished, Emma opened her eyes one last time. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for teaching me that courage comes in all different shapes and sizes. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for teaching me what true bravery looks like. Thank you for giving me permission to be human. Thank you for changing my life. Emma smiled. We were good for each other, weren't we? The best. I'm going to sleep now. I'm so very tired. But this time feels different. I think this might be the sleep where I don't wake up. Sarah sobbed. David held Emma's other hand tightly. Don't go, baby. Please don't go. It's okay, Daddy. I'm ready. I've had a good life. A short one, but a good one. I met a guardsman. I became an honorary guard. I made a difference. That's enough. Emma's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. Within minutes, it stopped altogether. The monitors made sounds that Thomas would hear in his nightmares for years. Doctors and nurses rushed in. But everyone knew there was nothing to be done. Emma Collins died at 8:47 p.m. on October 15th. Surrounded by the people who loved her most, She was 6 years and 11 months old. Thomas stayed with the family for hours after Emma's death. They cried together, shared memories, and tried to process the impossible reality that this extraordinary child was gone. Finally, in the early morning hours, Thomas returned to barracks. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He sat in his room holding Emma's drawing, replaying every conversation, every smile, every moment of courage she had displayed the next morning. Thomas requested permission to serve as an honor guard at Emma's funeral. His commanders not only approved, but arranged for a full guard detail to attend in dress uniform, an honor usually reserved for military personnel or royalty. Emma's funeral was held at a small church in her hometown. Hundreds of people attended, far more than the church could hold. Guards in dress uniforms stood at attention outside. Inside, Emma's small white casket was covered with flowers. Thomas gave a eulogy that left no dry eyes in the church. He spoke about courage, kindness, and how a 6-year-old girl had taught him what it meant to truly serve. He shared Emma's oath, her philosophy of being brave and kind even when things were hard. Emma told me that I did something special for her by kneeling down and talking to her at Windsor Castle. Thomas said, but the truth is, Emma did something far more special for me. She reminded me that rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. She showed me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is break protocol to honor someone's humanity. After the funeral, David and Sarah approached Thomas. Sarah handed him a small box. Emma wanted you to have this. She asked us to give it to you after she was gone. Inside the box was the brass button Thomas had given Emma, along with a note in Emma's childish handwriting. Dear Thomas, I carried this button every day, and it helped me be brave. Now I'm giving it back to you because you need it more than I do. Keep breaking rules for the right reasons. Keep seeing people. Keep being the guardsman who cares. Love forever, Emma. Thomas broke down completely. David embraced him, and the three of them stood together, bound by their shared love for an extraordinary child. In the months that followed, Thomas continued his hospital visits with renewed purpose. Every child he met, every hand he held, every moment of connection was a way of honoring Emma's memory. He told her story often, sharing her wisdom about courage and kindness. The viral video of their interaction continued to spread. It had been viewed over 100 million times across various platforms. People from around the world sent messages about how Emma's courage and Thomas's compassion had inspired them to be kinder, to break unnecessary rules, to see people rather than just following protocols. A foundation was established in Emma's name, funding childhood cancer research and providing support for families dealing with pediatric illness. Thomas became a spokesperson for the foundation, using his platform to raise awareness and money. The Guard Regiment officially changed their protocols based on what had happened with Emma. While guards were still expected to maintain their posts, there was now official guidance about when and how to interact with children, especially those who were ill or had special needs. Emma's legacy literally changed military policy. 1 year after Emma's death, a memorial was unveiled at Great Ormond Street Hospital. It was a bronze statue of a small girl holding hands with a guardsman. The plaque read, "In memory of Emma Collins, who taught us that true courage means being kind even when you're scared, and that sometimes breaking rules is the most honorable thing you can do. Her bravery lives on in everyone she touched." Thomas attended the unveiling with Sarah and David. As he looked at the statue, he could almost hear Emma's voice telling him to keep being human. Keep caring, keep breaking rules when kindness mattered more than protocol. She would have loved this, Sarah said quietly. She would have been embarrassed by the attention, David added. But secretly proud, Thomas smiled. She changed the world. Not through grand gestures or famous achievements, but through small acts of kindness and courage. That's the most powerful kind of change. Years passed. Thomas continued his work with sick children, his hospital visits becoming the most meaningful part of his service. He eventually rose to the rank of sergeant, where he was able to influence training and policy. It's always ensuring that new guards understood that their duty was to people, not just to protocol. He never forgot Emma. Her drawing hung in his office. Her button remained in his pocket during every shift. Her oath became something he recited to himself during difficult moments. Thomas spoke at conferences about compassion in military service. He trained other soldiers on how to connect with vulnerable populations. He advocated for policy changes that prioritized human dignity over rigid adherence to tradition. Emma's story became legendary within the Guard regiment. New recruits learned about the little girl who gave a toy soldier to a guardsman and changed military culture. They learned about courage, compassion, and the importance of seeing people beyond their roles and circumstances. When Thomas eventually retired from active service after 25 years, he established a training program for military personnel who wanted to work with sick children. The Emma Collins program taught soldiers how to bring comfort and courage to pediatric patients, how to balance professionalism with compassion, and how to recognize when protocol should give way to humanity. At his retirement ceremony, Thomas reflected on his career. He had served in numerous capacities, earned various commendations, and contributed to military operations in multiple ways. But when asked about his proudest moment, he always gave the same answer. My proudest moment was kneeling down to talk to a 6-year-old girl named Emma Collins. In that moment, I chose to be human, rather than just being a soldier. I chose to honor her kindness, rather than following protocol. And that choice changed everything. Sarah and David attended Thomas's retirement ceremony. They had remained close over the years, bound by their shared love for Emma and their commitment to continuing her legacy. "Emma would be so proud of you," Sarah told Thomas. "Look at how many lives you've touched, how many children you've helped, how many policies you've changed. All because you were willing to break rules for the right reason." I was just following Emma's example. She was the brave one. She was the teacher. I was just lucky enough to learn from her. David shook his head. "No, Thomas. Emma taught you the lesson, but you took that lesson and multiplied it 1,000 times over. You honored her memory by becoming the person she believed you could be." That evening, Thomas sat alone in his apartment. Surrounded by letters and drawings from hundreds of children he had visited over the years, each represented a moment of connection, a chance to make someone feel seen and valued. He pulled out Emma's original drawing, now carefully preserved in a frame. He studied the two figures holding hands, the guardsman and the little girl. Forever frozen in that moment of unexpected friendship, "I kept my promise, Emma," Thomas said aloud. "I remembered you every single day. I broke rules when kindness mattered more. I helped other kids be brave. I stayed human." Thomas understood something profound that Emma had taught him years ago. True courage isn't about grand gestures or heroic acts. It's about choosing kindness in small moments. It's about seeing people beyond their circumstances. It's about being willing to break rules that prevent you from honoring someone's humanity. Emma Collins lived for less than 7 years, but her impact would last generations. Through Thomas and the thousands of people inspired by their story, her message of brave kindness continued to spread. The viral video that captured their initial meeting remained online, watched by new viewers every day. In the comments, people shared their own stories of choosing compassion over convenience, of breaking unnecessary rules to help others, of remembering that being human matters more than being perfect. Emma's legacy wasn't just in the lives she touched directly, but in the ripple effect of her courage. Every person who saw her story and decided to be a little kinder, a little braver, a little more willing to see beyond protocol, was continuing her work. Thomas often thought about Emma's final conversation with him, about how she said she wasn't scared because she knew people would remember her. She was right. People did remember, not just as a sick child or a sad story, but as a teacher who reminded the world that courage and kindness were the most important qualities anyone could possess. In the end, Emma Collins and Thomas Bradley taught millions of people a simple but profound truth. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is break protocol to honor someone's humanity. Rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. And when you choose kindness over convenience, when you see people beyond their circumstances, when you're willing to kneel down and connect with someone who needs it, you change the world in ways you can't imagine. The guardsman and the little girl with cancer had touched millions, not through grand actions, but through one simple moment of mutual recognition and respect. That moment, captured on video and shared around the world, became a symbol of what humanity could be when compassion trumped protocol. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Emma Collins smiled, knowing that her courage lived on in every person who chose kindness, in every soldier who bent the rules for the right reasons, and in every child who learned that being brave meant being kind even when it was hard. The moment that touched millions started with a small girl offering a toy soldier to a guardsman. It grew into a movement that changed military culture, inspired charitable work, and reminded the world that our shared humanity matters more than any protocol. That was Emma's gift to the world, delivered through the guardsman who had the courage to receive it.